The Right Honourable Edward Miliband.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor spoke for an hour, but one of his phrases was missing. There was one thing he didn't say. Today marks the end of We're All in It Together. Because after today's budget...
Order. Mr. Gummer, I don't think we need you to lead the cheerleading. And given the respect to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, I expect the same respect to be given to the Leader of the Opposition. Ed Miliband.
Because after today's budget, millions will be paying more while millionaires pay less. A year ago, the Chancellor said in his budget speech, and I quote, "Now would not be the right time to remove the 50p tax rate when we are asking others in our society..." Is he saying he didn't say it? He said now would not be the right time to remove the 50p tax rate when we are asking others in our society on much lower incomes to make sacrifices. That is exactly what he has done. Tax credits cut, child benefit taken away, fuel duty rising, and what has he chosen to make his priority? For Britain's millionaires, a massive income tax cut each and every year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the fairness test for this budget was whether the Chancellor used every penny he could to help middle-income families that are squeezed. He has failed that test. Anyone who listened to the Chancellor will be asking the same question. What planet are he and the Prime Minister living on? 1 million young people out of work, 50 businesses going bust every day, a cost of living crisis for families. They promised change, but things have got worse, not better. What did he promise us in last year's budget? He said he would, and I quote, Mr. Deputy Speaker, put fuel in the tank of the British economy. He promised growth of 2.5% in 2012. Today he comes to the House and tells us it will be just 0.8%. Growth down last year, growth down this year, growth down next year. Every time he comes to the House, he offers a different excuse, but the reality is his plan has failed. Last year, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he told us unemployment would peak in 2011. And what has he delivered? We're into 2012, and unemployment is rising month upon month upon month. His plan has failed. And he promised us also, Mr. Deputy Speaker, last year, the deficit would be gone by the end of the Parliament. But today he admits he is borrowing over 150 billion more than he said he would. His plan has failed. And in the face of failure, what does he offer? Not a change in economic strategy, not a guarantee of jobs for the young unemployed, not targeting every penny he could at working families. No, we know the driving ambition of this budget for the Chancellor was to deliver a tax cut for people earning over £150,000 a year. There are 30 million taxpayers in this country. This policy will do absolutely nothing for 29,700,000 of them. How can the priority for our country be an income tax cut for the richest 1% at a time when the squeezed middle are facing rising petrol prices, higher energy bills, tax credits and child benefit being cut? Think of what he could have done with the money. He could have reversed his cuts to tax credits. He could have done something for pensioners. And in fact, I think there is a tax rise for pensioners hidden in the detail of this budget. He could have done more to undo the damage on child benefit, but he claims he can't afford it. Let me tell the Chancellor, every time in the future he tries to justify an unfair decision by saying times are tough, we'll remind him he is the man who chose to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on those who need it least. Wrong choices, wrong priorities, wrong values, out of touch, same old Tories. And let's come to his claims on stamp duty. Let's come to his claims on stamp duty, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There are 300,000 people benefiting each and every year from his top-rate tax cut. There are 4,000 houses sold each year for more than £2 million. So 99% of those who gain from his millionaire's tax cut will be totally unaffected by the rise in stamp duty. And they will get a massive windfall from this Chancellor. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor didn't tell us what this meant in pounds and pence. So let me... the Prime Minister thinks the Chancellor did say how much each person is getting as a result of his top-rate tax cut. He didn't, and I'm going to tell him how much. There are 14,000 people earning over £1 million in Britain. The Chancellor's decision today means each of them get a tax cut. Not of £1,000, not of £5,000, not of £10,000, a tax cut of over £40,000.
Order. It's not good for the opposition to not allow the Leader of the Opposition to speak. Ed Miliband.
Not just this year, but for every year. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what happens to those families who earn in 1 year half of what the Chancellor has so casually given away to the richest in the last hour? Families on £20,000 a year, a nurse or lorry driver. Even after the personal allowance change, they're not going to be better off. They're going to be worse off. Put aside the VAT rise and all the other tax rises that have happened. From this April alone, there will be a further £253 a year worse off. All he is doing for ordinary families is giving with one hand and taking far more away with the other. It's a millionaire's budget that squeezes the middle. Wrong choices, wrong priorities, wrong values, out of touch, same old Tories. Under his tax cut, a banker earning £5 million will get an extra £240,000 a year. Let's call this what it really is, the government's very own banker's bonus. Now, presumably, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he wants us to believe that the £240,000 tax cut is necessary to make them work harder, the bankers. It's one rule for them, and it's another rule for everyone else. Because this April, the Chancellor will be telling a family working for 16 hours on the minimum wage that if they don't work